Hello and welcome to Data Engineering Live. My name is Catherine King and it is a pleasure to welcome you to today's live stream. Now here at Orbition Group, we are so passionate about bringing you the latest and hottest content from around the world, and that's just what we're going to be doing today. And of course, as it says on the tin, this is Data Engineering Live. Now we don't do live for our own stress levels. We do live because we want you as the audience to ask your amazing questions. So make sure you get those in nice and early in the comments, because I know our host is going to be choosing the best questions and putting them to our guests. Now, it is my pleasure to hand you over to our internal expert, Natalia, who will be hosting today's discussion. And she is going to ensure that we cover all of the hottest areas. And I'm sure she's going to make our guests sweat just a little bit in some of those questions. So Natalia, without further ado, over to you.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to our Data Engineering Live. I'll be delving into the heart of data engineering, exploring how it drives innovation, fuels business growth, and transforms industries. Throughout the event today, we'll hear from our industry experts who will share their insights, experiences, and best practices. We'll also discuss the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead in this rapidly evolving field. Whether you're joining us as a seasoned data professional looking to stay ahead of the curve, or you're just starting your data engineering journey, this discussion today will provide you with valuable knowledge and hopefully a lot of inspiration. If you have any questions throughout, please feel free to pop them in the chat and we'll do our best to answer them. So let's meet our speakers today. Let's go to Jessica first.
Hi, Jessica Simons-Boswell. I'm the head of data here at e.surv Chartered Surveryors. Me personally, I've been working in data for over 20 years now, a long time, over 20 really, across multiple different industry sectors as well. So roles all the way up from developer to director of data engineering and back here as the head of data.
Amazing. And Jacopo?
Hi, I'm Jacopo Chiapparino. Been in this industry for quite a long time, around 15 years. I'm currently running data engineering at Wolt, a Finnish technology company known for its delivery platform for food and merchandise. We operate in around 20 countries with around 8,000 people, and been at Wolt since the very beginning when we were around 20. So quite many roles in the data space, and right now, I said I'm running our data department, around 30 people serving our product and operations.
Amazing. Brendon?
Hi, everyone. Glad to be here. Brendon Moodley, head of data engineering for Hastings Direct. I've been with Hastings for just a year now, but I've been in data analytics, working within the financial services and insurance industry for just over 20 years now.
And Shachar?
Yeah, hey, thanks. I've also been with data for the last 20 plus years, data and analytics. I've served in medium-sized startups to large companies like PayPal, and the last one being Meta or Facebook. At Meta, I was the data engineering site lead in London and also working on ads and business platform for the first 3 years, and then trust and safety. Today, I'm an independent advisor. I'm helping companies with their data journey and also advising to a lot of data startups. And just last thing, I'm sharing a lot of insights from my career on LinkedIn. So if anyone is interested, feel free to connect and follow. And yeah, cool.
Amazing. So let's start with the challenges you've dealt with in the data engineering space over the last couple of years. So probably go to you first, Brendon, because I know we had this conversation a while back about finding the right talent in this space. Is that something that's still been quite challenging?
Yes, definitely. I think data engineering and data engineers are probably one of the not most appreciated roles. They the guys that set up the strikers to take the final strike, so don't get a lot of recognition in that area. But yeah, I think just really finding the right talent within this market has been difficult. I've been interviewing for quite some time. And I think just the role of data engineers is different in different organizations, which adds to the challenge. Also, depending on which area of the business you reside in, you have engineers that are more looking at the extract load side of it versus engineers that are more transformative, focusing on quality. So, yeah, I think finding talent and the right skills to suit the organization is one of the key challenges that we have today.
And to Jessica?
Yeah, I'd definitely go with that. I think it's one of the wonderful things about data engineering is that it's a really broad spectrum in terms of what it can cover, all the way through from what we used to typically call, just DBAs, right through to hardcore programmers. And that covers a hell of a lot of the ground in between. But that does give quite a few challenges then in terms of actually finding people to cover that spectrum. Places where I've worked before, we've had everything from typical DBAs right through to really good principal Java engineers within our data engineering teams. And it has meant as well, because you've got that wide spectrum, it's quite a wide spectrum of knowledge to cover off as well. So sometimes it can be quite difficult for some of your more programmatically minded people to understand some of those challenges to do with actually how databases work and how you can get the most out of them. So it's definitely a challenge, especially when it comes to trying to resource those positions as well.
100%. And Shachar, do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, I'm actually not going to talk about talent. I mean, I think that's been said, and I agree with that. I think that actually, if we take a step back and think about what data used to be like, probably 20 years ago, then, most of the data was in one or two or maybe three platforms, right? We had big monolithic platforms that had all the data. And also most of the data was stored in relational databases, meaning that you spent a lot of time before storing the data thinking about how you want to store the data, thinking about the schemas, thinking about structure, and the data was managed by definition. I think what we're seeing today with clouds is that storage is becoming very cheap. Storing data in unstructured format is becoming easier. There's fragmentation of tools, and every company has probably hundreds of different tools, and the data is all over the place, and you need to collect that. So that's one thing. A lot of the data is kept in raw form, which is pretty much useless for the business, and there's a lot more work you need to do to extract value from this data. That creates a lot of ownership problems as well, because in a lot of cases it's not really clear who is the owner of the data. And I think that by definition, software engineers are people who own the data because they generate that, but in a lot of cases they don't see themselves as data owners. They just see themselves as people who build software, and data is just a byproduct of that. So I think that's that's creating another difficulty, and data engineers are stepping into that position, but in a lot of cases they don't really generate the data or have the responsibility for full responsibility of how data is created. And one last thing I'll call out is that privacy is becoming an ever-growing concern for businesses. More and more regulators are starting to look into how data is being used, how it's being collected, what is it collected for, and what it is being used for. Organizations have a lot of internal policies that are usually in the form of documents and not code, which creates a lot of challenges because you collect a lot of data, you don't actually know how you're using it. So I think, to summarize, I think that those would be the biggest challenges I would say in the data world today.
100%. There's a lot of challenges there from you all. Jacopo, do you have anything that we've missed off?
Yeah, I think what everyone said resonates quite well with me. Talent is very hard to find, and for us, especially due to the peculiarities of our company, where we have more deeper platform building approaches, and we are seeing a very big shift from classic use cases where people think about this sort of edge mindset where data engineering takes care of making or helping and making the reporting or the analysis happen. What we are seeing, especially in the recent or past 2 years at Wolt, has been more of a shift towards this sort of distributed data platforms where not only the data comes from multiple sources, but it's used in multiple variety, in a very wide variety of use cases that that have all sorts of different requirements, from reporting, which is sort of asynchronous in nature and slow moving, to more like a productize the data products sort of in the data science machine learning space, but also in sort of other analytical use cases that are more real time. So bringing people from all these different backgrounds to build something together, build a platform together, it has been very, very challenging, and putting everybody on the same page has been a sort of a big effort in our organization.
Amazing. No, thank you for your insights there. So just kind of touching on, modern data engineering and the tools and the technologies that are used, what have you seen that have proven most effective, probably in like 2023 now? We'll go to you first, Jessica.
Oh, I think, a question like that's quite a good one, because as well, it's very subjective to everywhere you're working and what you're trying to do. And, the last couple of roles I've been in, it's been a different experience every time in terms of what can bring more value to the table. For me personally here, one of the things which I'm beginning to see is going to bring us greater value, especially on the data science side of things, is going to be things like vector databases, because it's going to allow us to power a lot more of our sort of models a lot more efficiently, if we can get the whole vector plotting sorted out with the various variables. So for me, that's going to be one of the biggest things where at CRISPace currently where I am.
Okay. And Brendon?
Tools is an interesting one, because there's so many different tools and technologies, and everyone has their preferences on tools that they've worked on. Probably this is what they've studied, what they've learned, that they're most comfortable with. But I get pinged by lots of service providers with new tools, new platforms coming up in the market, and I think whilst I have some preferences for certain tools, I certainly prefer working on cloud as opposed to being on the enterprise data warehouses with the old limitations that has had. The ability to have access to real-time data, but I think it's more than just the tools. Your fundamental data problems still always exist, and they either link to maturity of the organization, the cultural issues, and also the type of legacy systems that you're working with. There's still some mainframe organizations, or there's some legacy policy administration systems that you're dealing with. And despite having the latest and greatest tools to work from, you still come stuck with some of the old school legacy systems that you need to deal with, which has the data quality issues, all of those things. It's always, and that's probably a common problem amongst a lot of organizations. So I guess it's a combination of, having the right skills, the right talent, the ability to assess the maturity of the organization, and then apply the tools that makes most sense for that organization.
Yeah, makes sense. And Jacopo, what have you found in this area with different tools and technologies?
So one interesting thing that we have been sort of exploring right now is mostly trying to switch our mindset from like what kind of technologies are cool to use, because they always come and go, but we elected mostly to focus on what products we are building, what experiences we are handing over to our teams, either our analysts or our BI developers or even our data engineers. So we have elected to focus more on the platform, so how we kind of tie in all the technology that people are using together in sort of in a way that is very well integrated and doesn't vary from department to department. So as a data scientist, for example, you can come in, the platform is one, there is some abstraction layers between what you want to do with the platform and the underlying technology, so that it's replaceable. And we are sort of trying to use either open source components for these sort of layers, or bringing our own flair. Of course, we are looking into sort of long-term technologies, like for example, we are right now looking at the storage solutions for our data that allow us to do both batch and streaming with similar technologies. We are sort of analyzing that space again, reduce the amount of mental load of our colleagues when they are going to actually do something, right? So that's we are looking at that, sort of these technologies, new emerging trends as enablers, but we are sort of trying to make a very big distinction between the work people want to do with the platform that we provide and the underlying technology. That is, in my opinion, like that has proven to be a good way to tackle this technology problem, right?
Yeah, makes sense. And Sasha?
Yeah, I agree with a lot of what's been said. I think that what is really happening, if you take a step back and you think about it, is that the role is maturing and evolving, right? And data engineering as a role, as a function, is a relatively new concept. So in the beginning, I think that we had a limited set of tools, and they were okay. They were not perfect, but over time, a lot of people started spotting gaps and started building a lot of tools. And now I think that if you look at a modern data stack, it's actually pretty complicated. There's too many different options. It's fragmented. It's all over the place. And a lot of these tools, you could even argue that they should be a feature in a different tool and not a standalone tool. So I think that that's one of the things that we're seeing right now. I think that cloud, and by the way, I'm speaking with a lot of startups and a lot of investors around this space and people who are building tools for data, and there's a lot of excitement in the industry about that, and it's becoming a big hype. So everybody wants to tap into this and build new tools and have a lot of really great technologies. So this is great. I think that what needs to start happening over time is that there will be more consolidation. And I think that clouds are actually one of the biggest, potential forcing functions to that, because I think that when you select a cloud vendor, then by definition, you get a lot of tools, a lot of technologies for free, and you can just pick and choose whatever you want. So I hope that, over time we'll see these things start consolidating to a smaller set of tools that do more for you. And like Jacopo said, reduce the mental load on data engineer who needs to learn, 20, 30 different tools to do a very simple job.
Very true, very true. And so just going back to my first point about, data engineering, it's fueling business growth, it's transforming industries. It'd be really interesting to kind of hear from you guys what emerging trends in data engineering that you're seeing, and what kind of your thoughts are for the future of this area. It'd be really interesting to know. So yeah, we'll go to Jacopo first.
There would be so much to talk about. I can name a few that reconnect with what I was saying earlier. So what we are seeing in terms of trends is people want to use the data that is being collected, that's floating around the company in a plethora of new use cases, right? So we are moving from this sort of reporting focused data warehousing to more like a distributed data platform. You don't exactly know where the data is coming from, and you don't really know what kind of use case is it going to be used for. So how do we create very good data contracts from producer, so that makes it clear where some data that is emitted by a system can be utilized, what kind of information does it carry, in what format does it move through the stack. I think these things are data contracts, and this sort of distributed data platform world and data utilization world is something that we are looking at very closely right now, and we are trying to sort of align our practices and tooling and mindset of many people that come from different, maybe more simple or even more complex companies, so that we can actually deliver something meaningful in this area. And one day it would be really great that the team that builds a service, we have over 70 at Wolt, can say, this is a business concept that my department is producing. It can be used in these things for these use cases, but not for these. And the data that's encoded in this topic or message has certain properties that the systems downstream need to honor, and so on. So that's what we are working towards, and I'm seeing a lot of companies struggling, but also making huge sort of steps forward in those areas.
Amazing. And Sasha, what do you see over the next few years in the data engineering space?
Yeah, cool. So I think that, first of all, I talked about fragmentation of tools. I think, for all I know, fragmentation will continue, and there will be more and more tools and more technologies before it starts consolidating. But my hope is that this thing will start happening sooner rather than later. I think that there's a lot more, but back to Brendon's point earlier, I think that there is more recognition to the profession now than there used to be 4, 5, 6 years ago, and I think that this trend will continue, because I think that more and more companies are now realizing that their data in itself is not useful unless you work and manage it and make it useful. And people are starting to realize that data scientists or analysts are not going to be very impactful if the data that they use in itself is not organized in the right way. So I think that this kind of recognition will continue. And I think that with AI and generative AI and all of what we're seeing now, my hope is that the tools we get are going to make us better. Things like Copilot and your ability to generate stuff is going to be faster. The tools will make you more effective by definition. We'll also see more design patterns and more things that are repetitive starting to eliminate, and the job will just become more interesting, because you would be able to focus on the more novel and interesting aspects of the role, and not just the repetitive aspects of it. So that would be my thought.
Thank you. Brendon?
Yeah, I think there's so many emerging trends within data, the data space, and I think, as mentioned, generative AI, even just machine learning models and the growth of machine learning models, is all of that's powered by data at the end of the day. So the ability to make data available faster, quicker is becoming more important. But it's not just about making data available. It's also ensuring that it has the right quality, it's got the right consistency, you have the right metadata and information around it. So I think it's mentioned, as like tools will probably help facilitate and make that a lot easier. I think the data ops as well, and more automation, I think is definitely going to be higher up the agenda to be able to facilitate and help achieve a lot of these goals going forward. So yeah, I think it's more about efficiencies. It's about creating more reusable libraries, the ability to meet the requirements. Every organization now wants to become a data-driven organization. And in order to get there, I think there's a lot of data that is needed, and it just becomes an explosion of requirements on the data engineering teams.
Amazing. And finally, we'll come to you, Jess.
I think for me, a lot of it is going to be, as people have said, it's nice, but data engineering is seen more as a thing by itself now. But actually, there's a whole ecosystem around that, which is still very much not very well understood in terms of data ownership, how data quality fits into that, and data governance. And you can have the best tools in the world and possibly the best data in the world, but if you don't have the supporting framework to actually make the most of that, it can be utterly useless, really. And so for organizations to really understand about data ownership, in that the data ownership doesn't really land with the people who look after the platform or do the engineering, that's with people who own the relationships. And within that, you can control your quality a lot better. And you can use things like Jacopo says with data contracts, so that at least there's guarantees around the types of data you can expect and you can work with. And so for me, it's more about seeing that whole greater ecosystem more widely understood and adopted by organizations, because like you say, a lot of organizations, we want to be data driven, but they need to realize that there's a lot more to it than just the tooling and just the engineering. It's how the whole thing is handled, how it's governed. And for me, that's a bigger part of it.
Amazing. Now, just to end what feels like a really quick 30 minutes, what would be really interesting to find out from you, because I know there'll be a lot of people tuning in, wanting to go back and listen to this, who are aspiring data engineers, or maybe wanting to move over from potentially being a data scientist over to a data engineer. So it'd be interesting to know how would you go about getting into the data engineering space? Brendon, what are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think I really encourage people within our organization to really get into data engineering. You know, we have large call centers, and we have a lot of talent in the call center. People have studied computer science degrees, and I encourage them to come and spend some time with data engineers. There's various different aspects of data that excite people. There's the data insights, there's the data science side of it, there's analytical engineering. But data scientists get excited about solving problems. They got to learn a lot of tools. So they're constantly learning, they're constantly challenged to try and solve these problems. So as a first starting point, I'd say, you know, reach out to data engineers and find out what it is that they actually do, and work out if it's right for you, does it suit your personality, and once you know it's right for you, you know, the training development, there's so many different channels to start off with. You know, we generally do boot camps, which starts off with basic SQL, and Python is a good starting position for that, and then starting to learn how to build pipelines. And as we start to mature it, we're running a couple of boot camps, grad programs at the moment. We're taking a lot of juniors into the data engineering space, and we have seniors that would shadow and grow and help nurture that as a career. And touch wood, we've had zero attrition within our engineering department for this year. So I think it seems to be working. We're attracting the right people with the right mindsets.
Good, that's good. And Sasha, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would probably say two things. One is sometimes it's easier to start in smaller companies, because bigger companies and, you know, big corps will usually have a very specific role definition, and when they talk about data engineering, they mean something very specific, and you have to fit into that sort of template to be able to meet the criteria and make it to the role. So especially if you're trying to transition from a different role to data engineering, it's sometimes easier in smaller companies where there's less the line between different roles is less rigid, I would say, and there's more flexibility. So even if you come in as an analyst or as a data scientist or as a software engineer or as a BI developer, you can always start taking more data engineering tasks and gradually make the move, just to build the experience first. So that's one thing I always recommend to people. Ask me about that. And the second thing is really understand the business you're operating in, because data engineering is, unlike other engineering roles, is not just a technical role. Data engineering is really where you bring the business and the technology together. And I think that too many people in their first couple of years, they spend a lot of time getting certifications and learning technologies, and they don't spend enough time understanding the business and how the business works. And I think that this is where a lot of people are missing, you know, a very important point.
Amazing. And Jacopo, come to you next.
I really agree with what Shachar said. To add to that, of course, it really helps having a solid programming or SQL foundation. But I also suggest to think what makes you excited in the data space is data science, machine learning, business, or more classic data modeling, and sort of find an opportunity that allows you to touch multiple of these. Smaller companies, for example, are great. Looking back at my journey, both the companies where I have been for many years, I started when they were very small, and then look at an industry that really excites you, where sort of your curiosity can come alive, and you can feel excited about the digging or helping some of the teams and people around you dig into the numbers and do something with data that is meaningful. Because that then will drive your curiosity to learn more and expand from there. That's what I would recommend.
Thank you, Jacopo. And then we'll finish with Jess.
Yeah, I think the points there that the other guys were making was really relevant on that in terms of organisational size, because for larger the organisation, then the typically more you get the specialised in the various channels, and so you're only maybe going to be doing one thing. Whereas if you start in a smaller organisation, then there's a good chance you're probably going to be doing everything. I've seen so many good data engineering careers finished with actually people who have started off in big organizations and then they get channeled just into one particular stream, and it can be difficult to get out of that. So it's like people say, know what it is you enjoy about doing and look to work on that as well, because otherwise, yeah, you could be stuck in a big organization, which is great, wonderful tools, but ultimately you could just be building views off of big data sets day after day. So
amazing. Thank you, Jess. Well, I want to thank you to our speakers for joining us today on our Data Engineering Live. Hoping our audience has got a lot of insight out of this. I know I have. And yes, we hope to see you next time.